If you believe in lifelong learning, it means that the whole world is your classroom. Unfortunately, many learning environments are created without a thought to that shared classroom. When RTM and Legat Architects partner to design a school, however, both organizations think not only globally, but long-term, weighing how this school can help students, communities, and the planet thrive for years to come. That's on this episode of Beyond Engineering, a podcast from RTM Engineering Consultants. Hi, I'm Celine Dirks, your host for Beyond Engineering, where we share stories about innovative design, collaborative development, and exacting execution that helps buildings, businesses, and the people working inside them work better. Today, we're back with Kathryn Duytschaever, Principal at RTM Engineering Consultants, and Robin Randall, Director of Learning at Legat Architects. Their conversation is both local and universal, touching on how two Legat and RTM partnerships have changed the lives of students in Iowa, and how their design principles lay the groundwork for global environmental impact. But what does that look like in practice? Before we get to our examples, Robin outlines her background.
You had also called out environmentalists in your LinkedIn.
Yes.
Why is environmentalism so important to you?
I am definitely a hippie at heart. And in the 70s, I was very much interested in environmentalism. And I come from a family of environmentalists, but I actually went to Ball State University for my undergrad. And the 4-year degree was in environmental science. And there were some great leaders there. We had some really good speakers come in and talk about, Lawrence Halprin came and spoke. So just some really wonderful visionaries about how do you take care of this planet. So I guess as an environmentalist, my drive is to save the planet, but it's also to educate others how to do that. 60-80% of the carbon footprint comes from a building.
Yep.
We're super excited that we're just now creating our first net zero building, and we're planning others, and we're looking for maybe a net positive building in the future. Yeah, so there are ways to achieve that and do it in an economical way.
So for our listeners that maybe aren't familiar with the term net zero, what does that exactly mean?
So net zero can mean a lot of things, but net zero energy means that you're creating as much energy as you're using on site. And there's a lot of different ways to get there. So first of all, you want to design the envelope as efficiently as possible. So you want to use as little energy to heat and cool the existing building. And then your systems want to be as efficient as possible. And you can use geothermal systems, you can use other systems, but you want to create the system that is most efficient too. And then it's just a math equation. So then you take whatever the building is needing to use and you balance that with renewable energy. Often it's solar, it can be wind, it can be other biofuels and other elements that you can use to get to that net zero. But it's basically a balanced equation. Whatever energy you need, you're producing. And then net zero ready can be a building that you're designing and maybe you can't afford to put the solar on, or maybe you can't connect to a wind farm at the time, but you're planning on doing that. So you can plan the building in those first 2 steps. You're going to plan the envelope as efficient as you can, and you're going to plan the mechanical system as efficient as you can, and make as little impact as you can, and then eventually add that renewable to make that a net zero building.
And a net positive building.
So net positive is that you would actually generate on site more energy than you're using. So you're helping all those 1970s and 80s buildings that are sitting out there and are energy hogs. You're helping balance that by giving back even more and just taking care of your community.
And then Legat has taken on the 2030 AIA challenge.
Yeah. So we are one of the few firms that are still reporting on the 2030 challenge, which the 2030 challenge is by 2030, we want to be a certain percentage of net zero energy building design. And then we want our offices also to be responsible for energy savings. It's quite a commitment. We are also a just firm. We have that credential, very few architecture firms do, but it is about giving back to the community. There's a diversity and equity and inclusion component to that. There's a wellness component to that too. So creating environments that support wellness for the inhabitants. Sustainability to me is the wrong word to use, because sustainability means that we're sustaining something. And what we're trying to do with our environmental design and being environmental responsible is to do something that is going to improve the environment and going to be net zero, as we discussed, or net positive and improve the way that a building functions. Sustainability is a buzzword right now, and it means that something is trying to support the environment and be good for the environment. But there's a lot of greenwashing out there where it can look like it's going to be more sustainable, but if it's more expensive and the contents of it aren't recyclable, or the way that it's made and it's shipped from Timbuktu to you, there's a lot of impact in a carbon footprint that's different. So we just need to be very careful when we look at the label on sustainability. And there's a lot of definitions that are really solid. The Living Building Challenge is an organization that defines sustainability, and Net Zero LEED, L-E-D, is an organization that also defines what sustainability is. And there's a complete checklist, and there's different levels of achieving that sustainability. What I like about Net Zero is that you either are or you aren't. You design a building, you intend to be an equal equation where you're producing or using energy and you're producing as much energy as you're using, but that is evaluated in the first 18 months of occupancy. So that is just, it's black and white. You look at the energy bill and you look how much you're producing and you look how much you're using. So that's a true definition of what we need to be doing for our environment. And we can call it sustainability, or we can call it environmental responsibility.
And I think that's a better definition for that, environmental responsibility, because a lot of times when it comes over into the technical side, the HVAC side, it goes off of a life cycle. You won't have to change out this equipment for 30 years. It has a long sustainability to withstand all of these elements. And it's a longevity that you want to say, okay, when I put in X amount of dollars, this is going to last me for so long. So that's something I could consult, not school districts, but a lot of other clients that'll look at hotels, the hospitality. You say, oh, I want a P-TECH unit. Well, you're changing it out every 5 years. Do you want to do that? Do you want that investment? Because now you're throwing this away. It's not a sustainable piece of equipment. So it's that kind of like longevity that we're looking at.
It's the return on your investment.
And I think that both Legat and our team is very good about looking at everything from a quality perspective. What is the function for intended use of the building? What are we wanting out of this? This is a longevity building, which is typically what K through 12 or higher education are. They're longevity buildings. But just maintaining that and just continue to consult the districts. What's going to be a longevity product and good for their environment? And what do you do at the end when you have to replace it? Is it recyclable, like you said?
With Grant Wood, that school was really the first one for that school district where I was able to showcase our consulting for education. And we presented multiple different HVAC systems, and we looked at the longevity, the payback, and we met with the board members multiple times. And I think that helped build our relationship, because you knew, okay, we're going to have another meeting about this, and we need to talk to another group about this. And I was fine. Like, we were a team together. And I think that helped build you and my relationship, that we were in this together. We were committed to doing the right thing for the school district and hoping that they made what we felt was the correct decisions, because at the end of the day, it was their decisions. We could only consult them to end up having a really great school. And Grant Wood is a great school. It really is.
Yeah. And what's important about Grant Wood is that it serves a lot of the special needs kids in the community. And so they needed some specialty spaces. They had a lot of teachers, which just means that their teachers are coming in just for the day or maybe 2 times a week. And so they needed that space. And we created a hoteling environment that is still used by all of the educators and a collaborative conference room for that space. And none of the other schools in the region had that. And now it's something we're replicating for a lot of the schools. So that was the little magic. That was the little invention for Grant Wood, as well as another cost saving measure that we created was the library also has a makerspace. So there's room for a classroom to come in and meet there, as well as the library space. And then the cafeteria is also their STEM lab. So there's water, there's storage there, and they can do their messy art projects in that area. It allows for double use. So that's one of the most efficient ways to design a school, is design a space that can be used in many different ways. And then having your engineer understand that and provide the kind of environment that we needed and the services and the utilities.
And there were so many good designs that went into that. But I think what was even better was the second school that came, Mark Twain, that we had already built the trust with the school district, showed them everything we could do. And then there was a second elementary where we really hit the ground running from the get-go with really innovative design.
Both of them are replacement schools for the same school district. They were built on site at the same time that the existing school was functioning. They're in areas that there's a high visibility, so they're designed in all directions, 360, and they play a role for that community. And so it's almost like Grant Wood is a conservative brother of Mark Twain. I don't think they're related. I'm pretty sure Mark Twain and Grant Wood did not live during the same time and never met each other. But in terms of their buildings, Grant Wood is the more conservative, more, I guess, predictable a little bit in terms of the classroom environment. And that really helps that special education student to know where they're headed and know what it looks like. And then the Mark Twain project is actually the gregarious brother. They're the outgoing. It's very colorful. It's a lot of energy in that building, and it really connects with that learning stair, connecting from the cafeteria to the library, is that it's a very outgoing space. And so it's just a little different personalities, but same program, same client, Bettendorf School District, and the same delivery method.
So in Bettendorf, Iowa, it's right in the river valley of the Mississippi River. And so with the river valley, everything's sloped down on a hill. And both of these schools were on a hill, so that was nice. From the front side, it looks like one story, and then you have a learning stair and you open up down the hill that you can have that 2-story window and have all of that fresh light. It seems so much bigger once you go through that front entrance. And they're on main roads, like you said. So it's nice to see that instead of having all of the dirt piled up, they build it down into the hill. So it looks like one large building right there. They've really utilized the sites well.
It reduced the amount of building envelope also. So it was a much more energy efficient way. But the funny thing is, it was driven by what was left. Right? So the existing school had to function while the construction was happening. So we had to put it in, both projects had to be in the hillside. And you probably wouldn't have chosen that as the ideal site for a school. But it's like, that's the best thing about design, is having that extra challenge can make the project even better. And that's what happened in both of these schools. Is, as you described, we tucked it into the hillside and we opened it up with that learning stair.
And I understand that it wasn't probably ideal at all for the design. Now it's functional because then tearing down the original schools in front, you made way for a much bigger parking lot. So now there's the ease and comfort for parents coming to these schools for all the children events. You make it friendly to the community. The bus path is on a different entrance, so you reduce that complication of traffic. So overall, there were so many different components that were put into both of these buildings. Having the original school still in play, building the new school, and thinking about the traffic patterns itself. Very cool projects. I really love all of the natural light in both schools. Just having all the natural light, especially with those learning stairs and then the commons and library area. Because growing up, I didn't have that. And that's not complaining at all. But growing up, the elementary school I was in was more boxy.
Yeah.
And that's the typical. And so having this fresh, just natural light coming in everywhere and seeing a big open area, there was just so many different collaboration opportunities within those spaces, which are really great for the school district.
And all that natural light and that exposure to the exterior is a subtext to learning about the environment. You're learning environmental issues just in a subconscious way by being in those environments, and you're appreciating the outdoors. And so what the research proves is that you protect the things you love. And so if you fall in love with the outdoors and you fall in love with the environment, you're more likely to protect it. So as a student, you're learning those environmental issues just by being in those environments.
So Robin, finally, at the close, if you had to choose one message for engineering pros to listen to our program and take away from this conversation, what would you say?
We need your help. We need your help to define what the systems are and speak about them in plain language for our clients to understand. And we need advice on how can we get to net zero? How can we get to net positive in a practical way that makes sense for each of our clients and customize the system? So listen, help us, and inform us on what's the best way to get there. And then just collaborate with us.
Awesome. Yeah. We can do that.
We appreciate that you do that.
Thank you.
Are you launching a career as an engineering technologist? Or are you a proven professional in the engineering fields looking for new ways to advance your career? Consider joining RTM Engineering Consultants. We support your growth as you sharpen technical skills, deepen business experience, and diversify capabilities across services, specialties, and markets from coast to coast. Our mentors are seasoned professionals committed to sharing expertise and passing knowledge from one generation of engineers to the next. Visit our careers page at rtmec.com to explore employment opportunities. That's rtmec.com. Learn why industry authorities consider RTM a great place to work, grow, and advance. Meantime, plan to join us again for another episode of Beyond Engineering, a podcast from RTM Engineering Consultants.